Hello, everyone, and welcome to episode 2 of PodcastGG here on the YouTube channel for Broadcast.gg. This is China Season 3 Contenders Preview Edition. My name is Kenobi Cast, and I'm joined here by two of the conductors, I would say, to the China hype train, Vowels and Volamel. How are you guys doing?
I'm pretty good. It's getting a bit late in the day, but I live on an NA sleep schedule, so I'm still plenty awake.
You know, Vowels is just going to sleep. I woke up an hour and a half ago and had a couple meetings, and they were fantastic. And, we're just got to keep that China juice flowing at every hour of the day, 24 hours, 7 days, 365. Someone's got to be up hyping China, you know?
Yeah,
Sipping on that China juice.
We got to get ourselves ready for those, well, at least for me and Volamel, those 4 a.m. wake-up calls. For Vowels, it's a little bit easier, but still early in the morning.
It's a little bit easier in theory, but I spent the last 8 months adjusting to an NA sleep schedule for you guys, and now I've got to go back to a UK one for this. So
us and the Bears, and the Bears, Vowels, and the Bears. You did it for the Bears too. I can see it in your heart a little bit.
Life is pain.
All right, well, let's get right into it. So, this is going to be Chinese Contender Season 3. We covered Chinese Contender Season 2, all of 3 of us, and now we're going into a new season. A lot of changes have happened, and we've seen a large shift from this upcoming season in Chinese Contenders. A lot of teams are just not the same as they used to be. A lot of poaches, a lot of rumored signings and signings to OWL teams, and, Lucky Future Zenith is not even a team anymore. So what, based on the things we've seen from Land Story, which is a little tournament in China that we've seen recently, what do you guys think is going to be the main talking point of this upcoming season? What are you guys looking out for the most? Volamel, let's start with you.
Like you mentioned, I think this is a giant power vacuum, and we're taking a step back. Something that I always appreciated from OGN's production has always been this kind of key word for a season, whether it's, rise or whatever, you kind of get that theme encapsulated in a single word. And I feel like this is a rewind. We're going back to, season 1. We really don't know what to expect from a lot of these Chinese teams. There is no, very clear favorite. There still is a battle for first, and, it's anybody's game at the moment. There are some front runners, but, it's Overwatch. Things change. Patches come and go. Metas rise and they fall, much like teams do. So it is a giant power vacuum. We're seeing, a lot of rookie talent being injected. We're seeing, spotlights being shown on the tier 3 Chinese scene. So we're seeing that influx of new talent. And this is the stage to make a name for yourself. So a lot of rewinding to do. We're going backwards a little bit to go forwards. Something that I think you brought up quite well, or quite eloquently, I would say, was the theme of the primer for next season. We could see a lot there. To be fair, right? Mm-hmm. There's a lot of talent just in the midst. There's a lot of talent from the former full Chinese Lucky Future roster that looked pretty okay in trials, but now we're just kind of in roster limbo. All of Ambitious Immortal, one of the strongest open division teams that I've seen in a long time, very colorful as well. They're just kind of out there looking for a team to play on. So there's a lot of, very, very good Chinese talent that maybe aren't being showcased yet, but they could be added in at a later date, or we could even see them in the first season of 2019. So again, we're taking a step back to take a step forward, I would say. It's a very volatile region right now.
I feel like maybe reconstruction is the word to go for, because Volamel's right. We are maybe taking a step back, taking a step forward. It is quite reminiscent of the first season of Contenders at the start of the year. But also, LFZ has gone. We've got this all-Korean roster monolith. Most of those players are now announced in the Overwatch League on various teams such as Seoul, Shanghai. They're all gone. You don't have that threat looming over Contenders China anymore. You still have a all-Korean Lucky Future roster, but it doesn't look like they're going to be the same caliber. It's going to be a bit more of an even playing field at the very least. You have a lot of the previous standout Chinese players, Crystal, Shai, Yveltal, Guxue, people who everyone knows from their showing in the World Cup, but also some of the people who didn't quite make it to the World Cup, like now Elsa from the Rapunzel, pretty decent off-tank. There are several players like that are seemingly absent presumably going to be called up into the Overwatch League, and that's why we aren't seeing him in the contenders. But now the question stands of who fills that gap? Who is going to be the best team now LFC is gone? Who's going to be the peak that everyone needs to beat? Who are going to be the elite Chinese players in contenders? Now they're all seemingly going to the Overwatch League. The region's got to now reconstruct itself, rebuild some of its depth in talent and in hero pools and whatever. And we've got to find who can step up to the plate. And that's what I'm interested in going forward into the season.
So what I'm hearing is kind of it's like a changing of the guard, as you'd say. The old talent's gone, new talent's going to coming in that we don't really know about. I mean, I think when we covered season 2, there were a lot of people that we didn't expect to ever be, maybe as good as they turned out. Like Guxue, for example, kind of just took the world by storm, and it's going to be interesting to see if anyone really brings that to the table. But you mentioned Lucky Future Zenith Vowels, and that team is completely gone. They're not in contenders anymore. They've changed. They've been poached all the time. And do you think Lucky Future has this now? They have this entire Korean roster that they're going to try and run back and get that kind of pseudo three-peat in Chinese contenders. Do you think that Lucky Future has that team, or what do you think is a team that stands out to you that could make a run for the title now that it seems a little bit more wide open than it was before?
Looking over the rosters, I think there's 2 clear favorites. Neither of them are called Lucky Future. You have T1W Esports Club, who I know you're both going to give me some flack.
Wow, no one would have expected that.
Yeah. T1W were one of the best all-Chinese teams in the last season of Contenders anyway, and the only player they've lost is Crystal. They still have the same tank line between Silverfree and Hybe, formerly known as Unhappy. They've got Molanran and Assassin staying over DPS players who played alongside Crystal. They're keeping Weir and Illusion, their support line. It's only Crystal who's been called up. They aren't seeing anywhere near the same level of roster turnover as some of these other Chinese rosters are. And even then, the player that they were replacing Crystal with, Mija, formerly known as Shuaigo, was the star player on the Ambitious Immortals team that everyone was so hyped about that did so well in Trials. So I don't feel like they have lost as much and have as much of a gap to kind of fill as some of these other teams do. The other one that I know Volamel is going to be jumping at a bit to show about is Team CC, who maybe a bit of an inconsistent team last year. Couldn't really tell they were actually an academy
maybe a
team,
bit,
but they've made a couple new pickups and they're looking like a much better team.
Much better, head and shoulders.
I mean, the bar wasn't set that high, to be honest, with the Team CC we saw last year.
I will say that a lot of these Chinese teams in Group B did kind of suffer from the same kind of ailment that Philadelphia Fusion suffered in Overwatch League Season 1, where it was a dice roll. Sometimes you rolled well and you got an amazing team. There were times where I looked at CC, I'm like, this could be the time that they are making the necessary changes or finding their pace in the meta, finding their footing within this team. Their synergies, starting to gel a little bit more. Something's happening. They look, and then the next week they incessantly run into the wall. But this team in this meta game so far, from what we've seen and some of these other third-party Chinese, they look really, really strong. It's a meta game that suits their front line, which has always been something that I was concerned about myself. Jichiren, he's aggressive. Chinese main tanks just are. Even if you're a Korean main tank playing in China, you just tend to be aggressive. It's just the way that you play if you tend to want to succeed. And he plays it. He plays a lot of these team comps. This goats, a very tank driven style, whether it's Winston goats, whether it's floats, whatever you want to call it. He's doing it very, very well. He's finding a lot of success and his team is backing him up with it. And that was one of my biggest criticisms of Team CC back in the day, is that he and Late Young would play very far forward, but his team didn't feel safe playing with them. They would always be split apart. So it was this very chaotic, not so much a death ball as much as you'd want it to be. And now we're starting to see that really come out of Team CC. They've added Songbus, who formerly was playing for Meta Athena, and some other Chinese trials teams as well. Very, very solid player. I think he's fairly underrated in his hit scan. They've added IEU up from the Australian scene. Very, very, quite a good hit scan player. Can also play, quite a few other heroes. And this team just looks pretty good. They've got a very deep DPS roster to kind of pull from. They still have retained K-Heart Yakumo. K-Heart's pretty good. I love me some K-Heart. And everything else looks really good. I do have to highlight their Zenyatta player Orchid, though. If there is a player to watch on this team that you've never heard of, you might have heard of Jashirin from Miraculous Youngster. You've probably, if you're interested in listening to this podcast, you probably have seen Contender Season 2. You probably were a little bit familiar with these, some of these names. Orchid is a name I have not seen. Complete rookie player, but looks to be one of the best Zenyatas outside of the Overwatch League. Like, very, very strong Zenyatta player. Definitely keep your eyes out in the kill feed for him. Very, very solid. I'm quite impressed so far. I do want to see a little bit more of what he has to offer. Get that hero pool of flexing, but so far so good. Team CC, for my money, have a very good read on the meta. They have a very good read on exactly what they want to do, their style. And I'm I can't say the same for T1W just yet. So that's why I'm a little bit more biased on the other half of the coin.
Yeah, there's a little bit of bias for both ways. I think you got the T1W fan club president and Vowels over there, and then Volamel repping Team CC. And it's going to be interesting to see when those two teams meet up, because that will be week 5, so we're going to have to wait a while. And both
it's
teams,
literally like going into the playoff.
Yeah, they're going to have to grow. It's going to be probably one of the best games we see throughout the season, so definitely keep your eye out for that.
I think that'll likely be the match that determines who actually wins Group A.
Mm-hmm.
I think it's going to come down to that.
A lot of stakes.
Very exciting matchup in week 5. Looking forward.
Oh yeah.
And speaking of teams, we've talked about the teams that are going to be at the top, or that we think are going to be at the top. What do you guys think is a dark horse team? A team that's going to maybe come out of nowhere and shock a little bit, and maybe get to one of those playoff spots. Moss 7 Club. Me and Volamel, I remember last season we really stand Moss 7 Club, as they say, and we really enjoyed how they played, and they kind of came out of nowhere with their play style. Is there any team this season that you guys think, outside of T1W and Team CC, that could, make a run for one of those playoff spots and maybe try to challenge for a championship?
I'm interested to hear what Vowels has to say. I think I've made mine pretty clear, but I'm interested in what you think.
I think there's a couple teams that could be pretty interesting. The two that stand out to me most are going to be 666 Legend and Flag Gaming. Neither look like particularly strong teams in the last season of Contenders China, but they've made a couple changes. 666 Legend maybe have a harder route because they're in Group A. They've got these big names like T1W, Team CC, Lingan Esports, so maybe they'll be looking for 4th seed and try and make a miracle run in the playoffs. But if you look over in the Group B, which is a little bit weaker, LGD Gaming seem to be a bit of a shadow of the former self. They've lost a lot of players.
Yeah,
Big Time Gaming, they don't have the same magic that we saw from Moss 7 Club. Lucky Future, we're not sure they're going to be able to live up to the same magic that LFC had. So then you start thinking, who's actually going to rise to the top in Group B? I want to keep an eye on what Flag Gaming can do. Even though they maybe have a lot of the same players as last season, they have MG as their off-tank now, and after his performance in the Overwatch League for Shanghai, I feel like this is going to be a redemption arc for MG. He's going to prove he is still a Contenders caliber player at the very least. So I'm interested to see what he does. Combine that with their main tank of Over, who came in, I think it was week 5 of the last Contender season, and was an immediate upgrade for Flag Gaming. We saw in the space of a week that Flag Gaming went from a easy win, effectively, to an actually competitive team, just substituting in Over on main tank and having him with the team for a week. And if you're getting that kind of impact after a week, what are they going to be like after they've had a whole off season between Contender seasons to keep scrimming as a team, keep practicing, integrate Over properly into the team? I feel like Flag Gaming people, I'm not ready to say they're going to win Group B yet. I don't think they're quite on the same level of T1W or Team CC, but I think they can definitely surprise some people who are going to be a little bit low on them after their performance last season. I'm very intrigued to see what Flag Gaming can pull out.
Yeah, no, I completely agree. Flag definitely looks to be much more potent for a number of reasons that we'd mentioned. Some teams have just kind of fallen from grace. LGD, they don't look very strong in this meta as much as they probably should. They've drafted a lot of people over from Hero Taster and Panther, who was kind of Season 2's like tank stay team, where they just kind of play tanks, and that's their style, and that's cool, and that's their thing, and they do it relatively okay. They've brought some people over from that team, and they still are struggling to figure out how they really play, goats, or this Winston shell of goats that people are running quite heavily. So they're struggling quite a bit. There's a lot of those teams that just have been picked through. They're still trying to find their own footing with the team. It's a brand new team, basically. You could rebrand it, nobody would know the difference. So yeah, I completely agree. Flag for me is definitely one of the dark horses, but I do gonna play a spoiler here again. I'm gonna go with 666.
Ooh, okay.
I know.
I'm interested
it's
to hear
shocking.
because I remember like we talked about it a little bit in some of the meetings we've had. Is like 666 is one of those teams that has a little bit of a mantra coming in from season 2 as one of like those teams who were just like had a really rough time, I would say, during season 2.
Yeah, rough's one way to put it. They were very underwhelming for me. They were again being put into the group of death, Group A, trying to struggle bust it out for that fourth. And now they kind of have fallen into the same trap, but look to be much more stable in with what they want to play, and they look to be a little bit more comfortable on these tanks. Do I think their play style is very deep and they can play multiple different ways? Not yet. Perhaps maybe down the line they adapt a little bit farther. They're a little bit more comfortable with allowing space to be taken. We don't need to immediately explode out and take a ton of space with our main tank just completely diving in there on Winston and just kind of worrying me a little bit. But for the most part, they look to have a good footing in the meta. It's a little bit one-dimensional. It's a little bit just kind of aggress and see what happens. But when you look at their field of competitors that they'll be playing against, it's still that same dichotomy as it was last season, where Group A has probably the 2 best teams in the league in the same group. And the other side of the Group B, it's kind of a crapshoot. It's going to be who really adapts the fastest, and it's going to be anybody's game. It's going to be very close, the same way Group B was last. Now with 666 in Group A again, for the second time in kind of this crazily stacked group, 2 of the big narratives I think going forward are like Team CC. I don't think that they're going to. I think Team CC are going to be the meta staples, and I think T1W are the best teams at trying to break the meta. So you have the best team at playing the meta, and you have the best team countering the meta. Then you have 666, and they get to play both of them during the regular season. That's probably your best practice going into playoffs, which they look generally like they're going to make, right? We don't know much about Zoo. We don't know much about Laboratory. Lingon probably still will make that as well, and it's going to be 666 and Lingon trying to figure out where their spots fall. Is it 3rd seed or is it 4th seed? 666 probably, again, makes it to playoffs. They've played against the 2 best teams in the region, and then you go up against some of these other Group B teams. I think they're going to surprise a lot of people. I think they're going to be the Flag Gaming of last season, where they came in and they're like, oh, wow, Flag's actually doing pretty good. I think they're going to surprise a lot of people. I think, a lot of people are looking past them if you're just kind of glancing at the Liquipedia entries and you see them, 4-16 or whatever their record was last season. It wasn't good.
Really bad.
Their gameplay was really, really shocking.
Yeah.
But they look to be very improved. So I'm in the same sense as Vowels, I'm very intrigued to follow them throughout the season and see how they progress.
Yeah, and those teams, we usually find one of those teams that kind of just like sneaks up on you. Like, I mean, Flag Gaming was ours last year, so maybe it could, or last season. I keep saying last year, it feels like a year, but I think one of those teams that really can bring it to the table will be 666 Legend and Flag Gaming. So hopefully they do good. Hopefully we get to see them more and go into playoffs. And Volamel, you kind of answered my question a little bit earlier when you were talking about Orchid, but I was going to ask, is there a player that you think is going to stick out throughout this season? Last season, it was definitely, we all said it was really just Guxue on LGD. He was the star player of the season, probably the MVP, if you had to give it to someone who wasn't from Lucky Future Zenith. So is there a player, Vowels, for you that, sticks out to you and says, like, this guy could actually, really do some work and could really, semi just, carry his team towards one of those later playoff spots?
I feel like there's a lot of there's a lot of players who could live up to that. We talk about China as a very aggressive region. It's very orientated about just letting someone carry your team by winning these 1v1s, 1v2s, and so on. And that's where we generally see the DPS come to the forefront. Guxue was kind of the exception to that, where he was the hard carry in a main tank role. For a lot of the other successful teams, it's been all about their DPSs popping off and having huge games. I feel like the obvious answers are going to be looking at, again, T1W, Team CC. You've got Milan Ran, who best Pharaoh in the region.
Fair. And with the changes too, like
absolutely. I'm really intrigued to see what he can do with the new Pharaoh. It's been around for a little bit now, but we haven't seen it in Contenders yet. We've got Mija coming up from Ambitious Immortals. Really potent Doomfist. We'll see how well he can flex onto other roles. Looking over at Team CC, K-Heart, Eat You Up, Song Boost, they have no lack of incredible DPS performances there as well. But then you start looking at some of these other teams, and one player that I'm not going to guarantee they're going to have an MVP level performance at all, but someone I want to kind of hone in on as someone to watch is Effort, who's going to be playing for Big Time Regal Gaming. Coming over from Hero Tacit and Panther, when they were they were definitely the tanky team of the last season, but when they switched over to DPS, Effort was kind of a shining star. Not quite the same level as players like Crystal or Eileen or some of these huge DPS carry names, but he definitely put up some good performances. And I feel like if we're going to see a kind of diamond in the rough DPS player, Effort's in a pretty good position to show his stuff.
No, I was quite impressed when I saw him on their soldier kind of weird high ground all-in composition during Land Story Cup. I was very impressed with his tracking, and that's there's some jokes around that. How potent is soldier going to be? How beautiful tracking.
He did get those changes where it's the fall off is
exactly
spread is from 6 to 9, I believe was what it was. So he definitely could creep back up into the meta.
It's very not likely, but it's a possibility that he could. We're seeing it in Europe again. Each region in Contenders has their own kind of style, and if Effort just wants to play soldier and they want to facilitate him on soldier and his tracking is that good, you could see them trying to adapt that into their strategy a little bit more than what it's worth. Is there going to be a patch change coming this season? Who knows? Like there's a lot of things that lie in the fog of war that we just can't know. So if you have that flexibility, you have that way to kind of meta proof yourself, it looks good. And Effort, I do have to agree, Effort looks really good. I think vowels will love this a lot. I'm really excited for people to see Mija play Doomfist. I think it's been locked away in the very kind of depths of, very niche.
Like a Diablo dungeon? Like just
kind of. You just need to go all the way down into the catacombs to find the boss, and now we're bringing him up to this very potent team. And I think people are going to really fall in love with his Doomfist, as long as he gets to play it, hopefully. Hopefully, our read on them is accurate, and they're going to try to break the meta and try to keep him, alive with this Doomfist pick. Again, he makes plays that don't seem possible. He is a human highlight reel. He's very fun to watch, and I'm just really excited to kind of allow people to see that and be excited about it. So that's kind of my pick.
Yeah, and I think it's interesting with Doomfist, in particular. I don't think we saw it too much last season, so it might be a pick that catches some teams off guard a little bit. They have been, Doomfist is a pretty good hero in the current meta with the abilities that he has, and especially as we saw with like that Ambitious Immortal composition. Sometimes just Doomfist, if you're playing it correctly, Doomfist just don't die. They do not. It is just the hardest character to just pin down. And one last thing before we get out of here, I'm interested to hear. We talked about a little bit about styles and play styles for China, for people who who might just be coming into this is their first season of watching Chinese Contenders Season 3. What would you say is their play style, and what should people be looking out for in terms of their meta comps and the play styles that they're going to be playing?
Your opponent can't contest a payload if they're dead.
It's true.
That's the Chinese playstyle. You don't need to contest it. You don't need to contest. Yeah, your opponent can't contest the objective if you just kill them before they reach it.
It's true. Yeah, more often than not, we see Chinese teams, fighting off of the control point on 2CP. And they'll push you all the way back to your spawn and just sit you there and say, you're going to have to attack us sooner or later. And they're very comfortable in doing that. They're creative. Chinese aggression gets harped on a lot, and to be fair, it's very valid.
It's kind of a style going through other esports too. Like just aggression has just been the name of the game for them.
They like to be the hero players, and in some roles it's not very easy to be the hero, and then you have a shift button on Reinhardt, and if you pin the Brig, well, I'm a hero. You know what I mean? I go for the shatter reads. I go, he's gonna jump out and drop the shield, so I'm gonna shatter. So sometimes it's a 50-50, and that's something that happens, right? It's just something you're gonna have to accept if you watch this read.
I think one of my favorite common themes we saw a lot in Contenders China 2 is what I like to call Reinhardt dive, where you run Reinhardt D-Bash.
Just hit that shift button.
No instant. There wasn't any wrecking ball or anything like this. You had Reinhardt as your main tank, and you just used shift off cooldown, and that gave you mobility, so you were effectively diving the backlines as Reinhardt. And China makes these things work, and that's the incredible part. We see, obviously, we can go on about Moss 7 Club, who's both their tanks with DPS flex players. They'd pull out triple DPS on Oasis points. They'd pull out Farah on the streets.
Bastion A,
Bastion A,
attack.
May defenses on King's Row. All these kind of things. There was even moments like T1W pulled out a quad DPS to support on Oasis City Center once and won the round because their enemy didn't know how to react. You see all sorts of really weird stuff that you just don't see in other regions, and it's really fun to watch more than anything.
It's the most Overwatch you're gonna get. Where Europe's like oh, we lack the tanks, and then North America's like, yeah, democracy. We play a good amount of things, but it's usually just dive. And then China's like, there's 29 heroes, folks.
Yeah,
we play all of them.
In China, it's not to say team synergy doesn't factor into it and compositional synergy doesn't factor into it, but Chinese teams a lot of the time are the sum of their parts. You're going to put up the best performances if you're playing your individual best hero. And that's the mentality we get a lot with these players. And that's why we see some of these maybe unorthodox off-meta compositions and swaps, because they're the comfort picks. They're the heroes that these players enjoy playing, and they pull it off.
Sometimes comfort's like what you need to win games. I mean, why try and, play to a meta that someone else is playing when you can just play what you're comfortable and just try and win that way?
Exactly. Use your team color. Use your style to fight against their style, and then we can talk about the stylistic matchups, and that makes my job a lot more fun and a lot easier when it's not just mirror matches day in and day out. So yeah, comfort is the name of the game in China. Sometimes it's not the most optimal, but when you have a Doomfist is willing to dive in, if you pocket him well enough, I guess we run it, boys.
we go again, as we say throughout this.
I mean, we're even starting to see influences from China leak out into the West as well. Like, I know it was only a show match, but the California Cup,
they played the AI comp. Yeah,
they played a variation on the AI comp. It wasn't the triple DPS dive. Yeah. They pulled out Diva Zarya as a tank line, which I don't think AI ever ran. The closest they would either substitute the Zarya for Diva or bring Brig Zarya into it. So it wasn't never quite the same thing, but it had the same principles of a Doomfist dive composition, with Doomfist as your main tank, and the only place we've seen that has been Chinese trials. The West is actually starting to emulate some of these things, and this is the melting pot it's all originating in, and it's incredible.
Yeah, I think for us it's really cool to see kind of these things happen beforehand. We were talking before World Cup, people are like, oh yeah, Finland's gonna beat China, this team's gonna beat China, and China just like ran through everyone until they hit the brick wall that is Korea. But that's a discussion
for listening. You better open your ears.
Yeah, but that's a discussion for another day. And I think all of us are really excited for this new season of Chinese Contenders Season 3. We all love China. We love the region. We hope that you guys will, everyone out there will fall in love just as we have. So we hope that you tune in. And speaking of, it's actually starting this weekend, so you can start early. The best time it's going to be on tomorrow. You can probably just go right now and you're going to be able to watch this, at some point. It's going to be great. And, it's going to be on Broadcast.gg. We're here brought to you by Broadcast.gg. If you want to be part of Broadcast.gg, I assume there's going to be a link below where you can join our Discord. Come on, we would love to have you. We love having new talent. And come share our love for Overwatch because that's really what we're all about. Let me just give you the times for Saturday for these games. They're going to be starting at 1 a.m. PT, 4 a.m. EST, and 9 a.m. GMT. So bright and early for me and Volamel. We have to get some coffee in us, definitely. And then it's going to be there's going to be 3 games. So there's going to be a lot of Overwatch this weekend. If you've been fiended for some Overwatch after World Cup, this is the place to be right here in Chinese Contenders. And then the next...
You can always just catch the VODs later if you want to lie in, don't worry.
That too.
We'd appreciate you getting up at the same time as us, but...
We're not going to force you. There's no forcing here. You can watch the VODs.
Get up. Get up.
Volamel has made his battle cry. Get up and watch Chinese Contenders. So
that's right.
On Sunday it's going to be the same time. So, and that's going to be going for the next 5 weeks. So it's going to be a season. We're excited. We'll be back with PodcastGG, hopefully weekly, and we will be talking about the games and recapping what we see. And we look forward to this season. Guys, any last words you have?
Not really. Obviously, thanks for creating the platform, having us come on and chit chat about China. I still think Team C is gonna win, and Vowels is.
Should we make a bet? Should we bet about something? Should we bet?
You want to bet?
Wins? We should make a wager about someone has to paint their face the colors of that team that wins or something.
Paint their face?
Yeah.
What kind of effort bet are you trying to make?
It has to be real. There has to be stakes.
We can do a Lord bet. I'm already in one. I might as well just go for bro. You want to make a Lord bet? T1W wins?
I don't know what one of those is, I'll be honest.
So you're betting that you have to refer to your opposition as Lord if you lose.
So if
T1W wins the league this season, I have to call you Lord Vowels.
Sure, I'm in.
All right. You heard it here. You heard it here first. And if neither of them win, we'll get someone else to be called Lord.
Wow. Yeah. If we both lose, then you know what? Handshake agreement. We'll just put this.
Yeah.
All right. Well, you heard it here. So we have it. It's set in stone right now. As if the Lord bet has been put down, and I think that's a good place as any to end it. So thank you guys for joining the podcast, and we will see you next time. Bye-bye.